CNN's Fred Pleitgen is the first Western journalist to enter Iran since this latest conflict with Israel began. He's there with our Claudia Otto. He attended a massive protest in Tehran where protesters chanted death to America, death to Israel. Fred has more from Tehran.
Massive crowds have turned out here in central Tehran to protest against Israel's strikes against Iran, but also against the policies of the Trump administration as well. Many of them were chanting death to America, were chanting death to Israel. We saw them burn American flags and burn Israeli flags.
You punch the United States and Israel in the mouth, he says. Trump, you are threatening my leader, this woman says. Don't you know my nation believes death is sweeter than honey? What do you have, Israel? He says. You have nothing. You are occupiers, unreligious. You're killing people, killing women. You kill everyone. You're terrorists.
So you can see that anger here being voiced by many of the folks who are walking here in this protest, whereas the Iranian government has said that as long as the Israelis continue their bombing campaign of sites here in Iran, there will be Iranian missiles flying towards Israeli territory. They're calling on President Trump to try and end this direct confrontation. Otherwise, they say, there could be a direct military confrontation between Iran and the United States. The Iranians say it's not something they want, but they also say it's something that they're ready for. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Tehran.
Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis joins me now. Admiral, first of all, what do you make of a protest like that in Iran? Obviously, the government the Iranian government wants to see people out on the streets protesting, sending a message, certainly to folks in the United States and perhaps in Israel. You had Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking directly to Iranians several days ago, encouraging them to rise up. That seems difficult, obviously, even though we know there are deep divisions within Iran during a bombing campaign. Not clear a lot of people are going to be rising up against the government. I'm wondering how important for Iran is a demonstration like that?
It's important for the government, which I think you're correct is increasingly brittle, simply because of all the economic pressure the country's been under for much of a decade, as well as obviously the bombing campaign right now. But I think the West and the Israelis would be wise to look at the reaction, for example, of the Ukrainians. When the bombs start dropping, nations tend to pull together. Look at the Brits during World War II. So I think there's probably a thread of sincerity that runs through those demonstrations as that population reacts in defiance to the bombing of Israel.
We're seeing diplomatic efforts going underway in Europe between European foreign ministers and Iran. Do you put much stock in that? Do you think those are important?
I think they are. Certainly the three primary actors in the drama at the moment are Iran, Israel, and the United States. But there are two other nexi of power that I think are important to keep in mind. One is Europe and the Europeans, hence the importance of these talks in Geneva. Let's face it, Europe, the second largest economy in the world after the United States collectively, stands to lose an awful lot economically. They're within range of Iranian missiles. They have a real stake in what's unfolding here. And I think they could nudge the United States toward a diplomatic solution. The other pair that we don't talk about much are Russia and China, both of whom regard Iran as an important client state, and both have tools they can use to try and push toward a diplomatic solution. So let's hope all of that pressure collectively somehow moves this toward a diplomatic solution, although at the moment it looks more like military action ahead to me.
I've talked to some Israelis who are supportive of what the government here is doing, and they're concerned about losing momentum. They feel like there has been successful strikes by Israel against Iran. Israel has said that they kind of have freedom of movement in the skies, though not complete, because obviously we saw missiles being launched into Israel today as well as yesterday. But from a military standpoint, is momentum something that might be lost with this pause by the Trump administration?
I don't think so. Given the fact that it's only 2 weeks maximum, don't forget President Trump said, within the next 2 weeks, I'll make a decision. He didn't say, I'm pausing for 2 weeks, then I'll announce a decision. I think more action could frankly come at any time. And 2 weeks is not a long time. In fact, I think it actually improves the chances of success in the mission because the U.S. is putting even more forces in the region to conduct a strike successfully if the U.S. decides to go ahead and do it. So I don't see this 2-week interregnum as a momentum breaker. I look at it, hopefully, I suppose, as one last opportunity, kind of last exit before the tunnel for diplomacy to have a chance.
If the U.S.'s role, if there is going to be one, a military role in offensive operations, is to target and use the weapons only they have against this Fordo facility, does that actually meet the military objectives of Israel, the elimination of Iran's nuclear facilities? Because there's obviously concern that over what we may not know, where enriched plutonium may have been moved to. These things are moved around with some regularity. There could be sites that we are unaware of, that Israel is unaware of as well, without actually having forces on the ground inspecting these sites. Can you really be sure Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed?
You cannot be. And this is what you and I are old enough to remember Don Rumsfeld. He used to talk about known unknowns. And that's what you're describing. Yeah. Iran's a huge country, 2.5 times the size of Texas, mountainous. It has a population of 90 million. There's an awful lot of space that Iran could use, and they have a lot of resources in terms of population. So at the end of the day, a single bunker-busting bomb would be a feel-good moment. I think it would be a successful mission. But those known unknowns of, are there other programs? What would the response be of Iran lashing back? Would they try to close the Strait of Hormuz? Would they attack U.S. forces in the region? There are many known unknowns that ought to mitigate against this strike, at least until we've given diplomacy further opportunity.
Yeah, and of course the unknown is one bunker buster bomb enough? Would it take multiple? Would that even work? These have not been used in a situation like this. Admiral, I appreciate your time. Thank you.